Alright, so this one I'm going back to PowerPoint and I'm going to do a basic overview of all 24 ghosts. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I'll do the basics so that you understand the key things to each one. First up is the spirit. It's the default ghost because it really doesn't have a special weakness or strength. Its key thing is that smudging it prevents it from humming for 180 seconds instead of 90. That can be difficult to tell if you don't have evidence. But it normally just hunts below 50%. It gives EMF 5, Spirit Box, and Ghost Riding. This can be difficult at higher difficulties like Nightmare and Insanity just because it really doesn't have any extra tells. And just because it doesn't hunt for 180 seconds doesn't mean that it's automatically a spirit, because that's random. Moving on, next is the Wraith, called the Teleporter Ghost. The key thing is it has a very easy tell as long as you have salt. It won't disturb or touch the salt piles, nor will it leave any of the UV footsteps. Originally, it would step in the piles, but it just wouldn't leave any footsteps. Now it doesn't even do that. It has an ability where it can teleport to a player and do an interaction event or even a hunt there. So if you have a player far from the favorite room or any crucifixes, it could very easy for that. Also, as a result, sometimes if you have a player hiding, you might want to have a crucifix with them. But as I said, it's very easy to tell what ghost is, provided you put down salt. It hunts below 50% as EMF 5, Spirit Box, and Dots. And then next we have the Phantom, Invisible Ghost, or a Walker Ghost, as I might sometimes call it. It can follow players in a similar manner to the Wraith, but it actually has to walk there. So the best way to kind of keep it in its room would be to have everybody sort of together around the favorite room, because it can otherwise be difficult to get evidence. But if it's just a single player, that's not nearly as difficult. If it manifests and you look at it, it drops your sanity faster than the other ghosts. But taking a photo of the manifestation will also cause it to disappear. So if it's doing something like hum, you'll still hear the hum or singing, even though it's no longer visible. It'll be less visible during the hunt. It flickers slower, so it's invisible more. Otherwise, it just hunts below 50% and has Spirit Box, fingerprints, and dots. Next, we move on to the Poltergeist, the noisy spirit, noisy ghost. It has a particular ability that people in the community call the Polter Throw, where it can throw multiple objects at once, and every object that it throws incurs a 2% sanity loss for item thrown to nearby players. So not anybody that's quite a bit of a distance away or in the truck or anything. By this, what you do is you just make a big old stack of items next to each other, and you wait for it to explode. If you see that explode, it's a poltergeist, no questions. When it hunts, it will literally throw an object that's nearby every half a second, so it will be very noisy, throwing around a lot of stuff. Otherwise, it hunts below 50%. It does Spirit Box, fingerprints, and ghost riding. And now we move on to the Banshee, which has some similarity to the Phantom and the Wraith, the Wailing Ghost. Whereas the Phantom can walk and the Wraith can teleport, it can roam towards a player and do events, hunts, or interactions there. It has a unique thing where it picks a specific target out of the players. If it's single player, this isn't really going to matter. But if it's multiple players, it will focus on one player as its target until that target is dead. Or leaves the location and then it temporarily picks a secondary target. It's got a pretty good tell where with a paramicrophone you might get it to do a unique scream or wail. No guarantee how often it will do this though, so you might be trying to wait for a second, but you often will get one, and that makes it one of the easiest ghosts to tell what it is. It prefers singing events. It'll hunt below 50%, but it focuses on the sanity of its specific target, not the average one. So keep that in mind. There have been reports that it does more sanity drain during its singing events also. And its fingerprints, ghost orbs, and dots. Next we have the Djinn, the Fusebox Ghost. It's called that because it can silently drain you for 25% sanity from a random player, provided the breaker's on. The key thing about this is it can't use any of its abilities if the breaker's off. And it will drain the 25% sanity, but it'll also give an EMF signature at the breaker. So you can put down an EMF reader at that breaker, and when you hear that one go off, go check your sanity. Um, it will almost never turn off the breaker. I've heard of some cases. Now, keep in mind, it may flip enough lights off that that causes a breaker, so don't be mistaken. Otherwise, it hunts below 50%. During a hunt, if its chosen target is further away, like say down the end of a hall, it will speed up really quickly, and then it'll slow down once it gets near that target. This makes it really rough on maps like high school, where it can literally fly down a hallway after you. So yeah, EMF 5, fingerprints, and freezing. Next, we have the Mare, Darkness Ghost, because everything about it is based around the idea of darkness. In a dark room, it can hunt at 60%. Often it's going to be the favorite room, but that's not a guarantee. If the room is lit, it's down to 40%. Great way, there's a couple of ways to actually tell this one. If you have two possible places that it can roam, one's lit, one's dark, it'll strongly favor the dark room. If you have the lit room, if you have the room lit, that's favorite room or where it is there, it will try to wander to dark rooms nearby. It will never turn on the lights, although this has changed over the years. But yeah, it's not supposed to turn on the lights. It prefers exploding the lights so it can make the rooms dark. The old-fashioned Mare test, which in some versions has worked, some versions not, is to keep flicking the light on and on and off. And then suddenly, if the ghost turns it off, then that's the Mare test. It'll prefer wandering away from lit rooms, so you can use motion sensors to kind of figure out potentially where it is. Plus, if you can see your sanity levels, if it's not hunting at like 49% and it's a lit room, there you go. So Spirit Box, Ghost Orbs, Ghost Writing. Next is the Revenant, which at certain patches has been one of the more dangerous ghosts, Speed Ghost. The problem with this is its only ability is during a hunt, so there's no tells, special tells, so it could be a difficult one with fewer evidence. When it has line of sight with a target, it really goes very fast, and then when it doesn't have line of target, it's very slow. So if you're just hiding or a single player and you hear it going slow, that's a good indication it could be a Revenant. But you'll have to have a hunt to figure that out. It hunts below 50%, Ghost Orbs, Ghost Writing, and Freezing Temps. And next we have the Shade, Quiet Ghost. Its big thing is that if there's a player in a room with it, it won't throw or use objects there. It'll be very, very quiet, and it won't hunt until you're about below 35%, and it won't hunt if the player's in the same room with it. So you could be sitting there, not gathering any evidence, down to 0% sanity, and just because you're in the room with it means you won't get anything from it. You'll wonder if the game's bugged. This is a really difficult ghost for newer players because they'll just sit there, an hour will pass, they don't know what's happening. If it does manifest, it really prefers shadow manifestations because that can be a clue. Your sanity matters too, so if your sanity's at 100, expect next to no activity, but it starts to become at normal levels when you get down about 50%. However, sometimes there are exceptions to the rule with shades that can be very noisy shades. So, EMF 5, Ghost Writing, and Freezing Temperatures. Next, we have the Demon, which is basically the most dangerous ghost, at least as of this patch, and it's always been a dangerous ghost. Call it evil or dangerous or whatever. It can actually hunt below 70% or 75%, but it also has an ability where it can hunt at any sanity. So you walk into there and there's no setup grace period, and boom, it hunts. I've died in 30 seconds of an investigation to a demon. Crucifixes have a 5-meter range instead of the 3-meter range, so it's more effective against them. But the cooldown after it fails a hunt attempt is 20 seconds instead of 25. So those are some ways you can kind of figure it out. The smudge stick only works for 60 seconds instead of 90 seconds to prevent it from hunting. Another tell. It really likes early hunting. It really likes chain hunting. When you get down to 0 sanity or something with a demon, it's going to be hunting every chance it gets. That can be really a lot of trouble, especially for newer players not used to dealing with that. Fingerprints, Ghost Writing, and Freezing Temperatures. Next we have the Yuri, which I kind of call a sanity ghost, because its special ability is it has a 15% sanity drain, and the only indicator of that is the door, a nearby door in the room will shut completely with no sound. Otherwise it just hunts below 50%. Smudging it also traps on you in the room for those 90 seconds. So if you want to put out motion sensors around that room and see if it's going in and out when you smudge it, that's another way to tell. Ghost orbs, freezing temps, and dots with that one. Now we have the Oni, the active ghost. They've changed how the Oni has worked several times. So a year ago, it was like the big brother to the poltergeist. Now it's all about being visible. During the hunts, it'll do the opposite of the phantom, where it'll just be more visible during the hunts, more visible during manifestations. So you'll see a full-on model instead of like a shadow or something. It'll double its sanity drain. Any sanity drains it does with events or manifestations, it'll double those. The big tell with it is it can't do that ghost mist or air attack thing. So if you see that, it's not an Oni. Otherwise, it hunts below 50%. EMF 5, freezing, and dots. Now there's the yokai, the streamer ghost. This was put in by the devs literally to punish streamers who were talking all the time in the game. It can hunt at as high as 80% if the nearby players are talking. When you're single player, unless you're streaming or making videos, you're not really going to be talking too much. Plus, if you use the push to talk key or something, you're not going to have to worry about this. But if you're in a multiplayer, the yokai can be absolutely devastating. Players talking may anger it and cause it to hunt. If you want to get more activity with it, you talk. Of course, you could also get a hunt. The other side to that is during the hunt, though, it can only hear or sense player electronics like 2.5 to 3 meters. So if you're on the other side of a room and you're screaming and it apparently not paying any attention to you, it could be a yokai. Spirit box, ghost orbs, and dots. Next is the Hantu, the freezing ghost. This is usually a pretty easy one, but it can be interesting. Its speed during the hunt's totally based on the temperature of the room. So if you're in a hunt and you hear it speed up in one room, slow down, and it's slow most of the time, it could be an indication. Keep in mind temperature is a factor of the breaker, so I'm assuming you're keeping it on most of the time and keeping most of the rooms warm. So listen for those speed changes during a hunt, and you'll be like, okay, all right. As a result of that, it doesn't do a line of sight speed increase during the actual hunt. So if you're keeping it, looping it in a warm room, you can't actually loop this ghost if it's really warm, and it's not going that fast. It will go slower than the player, so you can't actually loop it around. It won't turn the breaker on. It's more likely to keep turning it off. Occasionally during the hunt, if you're paying really good attention, you can see freezing breath coming out of the ghost model. In Nightmare and Insanity, though, it always has freezing temp speeds. It's always super fast to make it deadly in those. It hunts below 50% finger prints, ghost orbs, and freezing temperatures. Goryo, the shy ghost. This is a pretty easy one most of the time, but it can be a little frustrating. It only appears on camera if nobody's in that room. But the player can go to the next room, look through the door with the camera, and see the dots. It also really doesn't roam far from the favorite room. Apparently, it doesn't ever change the favorite room. If you see dots in the same room, you can roll out the Goryo, so that's like the Goryo test. Just grab a video camera, go to the next room, look through the door, and then rinse and repeat while you're in there. It hunts below 50%, EMF 5, fingerprints, and dots. Next, we have the Myelin Volume Ghost. During a hunt, it's much quieter. You can't hear the footsteps from the same amount of distance. That also could mean it can sneak up on you. It's not just footsteps, it's any noise, apparently. But also it's much louder when you're listening to paranormal noises through the paramic. Otherwise, that's basically just what it does. So hunts below 50%, EMF 5, fingerprints, ghost writing. Next is the Onryo, the candle ghost. This is an interesting one because a lit flame or a lit candle kind of works like a crucifix, except it doesn't use up any charges. The other side to that, though, if it extinguishes a flame or a candle, it can literally trigger a hunt at any sanity. Otherwise, it hunts below 60%, so it is an early hunter, even without the candle. The Onryo candle crucifix test is interesting. You put a lit candle on top of a crucifix, If the crucifix eats through a charge and the candle's still lit, it's not an unreal. But it has to blow out that candle first, and then the crucifix catches its hunt attempt. Then you got an unreal. If you want to really keep it at bay, multiple candles in the room, all within sort of a 4-meter range, and just keep relighting them as you go through. But if you're not careful, it could blow out 1, 2, 3, and by the third one, statistically, it's going to hunt. So keep that in mind. Spirit box, ghost orbs, freezing temps. Next is the twins. Probably most people think somehow you got 2 ghosts going. In fact, most of the community thought that for a long time until the devs said otherwise. It's really just 1 ghost, but it seems like you're dealing with 2. That's because it can perform an interaction kind of in the normal range that most ghosts can, and it can perform a second interaction in a much greater range, so several rooms away. So maybe it touches 1 door, and then 2 rooms away you hear another door being touched. Usually the actions are kind of paired up together, but they don't have to be the same one. So if you get an interaction, and then a short amount of time you get another interaction, another distance, but it could do those 2 in the same room, so keep that in mind. You're seeing a lot of actions. On the total EMF activity board, you'll see a pattern that indicates it might be the twins. But it still just has 1 favorite room where you can gather the evidence. It does have a twin when it comes to hunting. You're either going to have the faster twin, which is a little faster than normal, the slower one. You listen through multiple hunts and you hear how the overall speed has changed, but it's a constant speed, unless it's getting LOS on players. So you could hear it going a little slower, a little faster. You have to have a really good ear because it's a very small difference. But yeah, that's another way. It hunts below 50%. EMF 5, Spirit Box, Freezing Temps. Next we got the Raiju, probably one of the more dangerous ghosts, second or third. Electronics Ghost. The good thing about this is it's an early hunter, but it's not too early of a hunter, so it's not like a demon. But once it gets below 65 and it's near electronics, the presence of player electronics could trigger a hunt. Otherwise, it's below 50%. The head cameras don't count. It gets a speed boost for any time it goes into a room where there's most player electronics. Head cameras are an exception to that. It is a big boost. Most of the time, it's going to start a hunt from the favorite room. It's going to come zooming out of that favorite room. And if you're playing on Nightmare or Insanity with 2 seconds, or you got a curse hunt with 0, you could be dead before you can hit that smudge stick. It does also have a greater disruption range, about 15 meters instead of the usual 9 to 10 or whatever. You might be able to use that for a tell if you can get a firm idea of where that mark is. EMF 5, Ghost Orbs, and Dots. Now we got the Obake, the handprint ghost, fingerprint ghost, because you can actually leave a special set of fingerprints where it's an extra digit. So if it's on a door, you might see 6 fingers. If it's on a keyboard, you might see 3. If it's on a light switch, you might see 2. So it gives a very easy tell. If you think it might be an Obake, just keep looking at those prints. You might get lucky where the first thing it touches in the entire investigation leaves that, and you're like, Obake. There's also a chance, 25%, that it won't leave fingerprints for an interaction. So if it keeps touching a door and you're not seeing the fingerprints every single time you notice a fingerprints ghost, Obake. It also can cut the duration of the fingerprint trace by half with a special ability. So you got to really stay on top of checking the fingerprints out. During the hunt, sometimes it can change into different ghost models that can be hard to detect sometimes. Normally it hunts below 50%, EMF 5, fingerprints, and ghost orbs. Next, we move on to the Mimic, which can be the easiest or the most dangerous ghost in the game because it literally can mimic any other ghost. But it got their abilities, but not their evidence, and it always gives ghost orbs as kind of a fourth false evidence. Anytime you get ghost orbs, you got to rule out a Mimic, usually by testing with a spirit box. And it can change that ghost type every 30 seconds to 2 minutes. It can't change it during the hunt, though. And because of the fact it can change, it can be an early hunter, a late hunter, anything. It can be one of the most dangerous ghosts, but statistically, if the 3 most dangerous ghosts versus the other ones, Spirit Box, Fingerprints, and Freezing Temps. And now we move on to the Moroi, Insanity Ghost. If you hear sounds from it through the spirit box, the paramic, that puts a Mirai curse on you, which starts draining your sanity. It doubles your passive sanity drain. Um, but this is a sanity drain that you can't alleviate with a candle. So that's one way to test. Go into dark rooms with a candle, wait like a minute or so, go back out, and if your sanity was still draining from the passive, then you got the curse. If you go outside, it pauses it. If you take a sanity pill, it gets rid of it. Its speed is speed during hunts tied to your sanity. At about 45%, it starts speeding up. At 0, it's one of the probably the fastest or one of the most fastest ghosts in the game. The smudge sticks work for 12 seconds instead of the usual 6 during a hunt. That's a way you can tell what it is. As a result, there's several good ways to tell if it's a Moroi, and it hunts below 50%. Now we've got the Dialkin, the Diogen, however you want to say it. Dialkin basically is Dutch for the eyes, but the eyes ghost. The thing is, you can't hide from this one. It runs straight to its target, and then when it's about 3 meters, it slows down. So if you're in a closet, it's going to get you. So you got to be ready for this one. If you hear a train coming, you know it's a Dialkin, be ready. You have to lead it around or loop it, so you want to get close, but not too close during the entire thing. So during the hunt, it's a little more visible, so it can be more, easily tracked, visually speaking. Doesn't get a line of sight increase during the hunt. If you're right on top of it, like within 1 meter, you can get a very unique spirit box sound. It can be hard to pick up. Conversely, it can be harder to get a spirit box response from it at a distance too, especially in a bigger room. It can change its target mid-hunt, so if you got multiple people working with it and it suddenly changes, that happens. It's a later hunter, so it hunts below 40, spirit box, ghost riding, dots. And lastly, we come to the last one, the Fae, the age ghost. It starts young, and it can hunt as high as 75% when it's young, or that may go down to all the way down to 15% when it gets really old. The speed during the hunt depends on the age. When it's young, it is fast. One of the fastest, if not the fastest ghost. But it also doesn't get a line of sight speed increase. So when you get it really old, I mean, you can loop it, you can lead it around. If you get the Ouija board, it's very easy to tell it's a Thea. You ask it what its age is, you hang out around it for a while, you ask it again, it should get older. If a mimic mimics a Thay, though, it just picks a random age. You might still be able to tell from that, I'm not sure. If you listen to it through multiple hunts and it gets slower each time, you have a Thay. So that's pretty much it, the basics of all 24 ghosts.